I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I'm your host, Seth Swerzik. It is both an honor and a distinct pleasure to welcome our guest onto the podcast today. If you're even remotely familiar with our company, then this man would need no introduction. He's a hunter, a conservationist, husband, father, grandfather. He's the boss man, our president, Steve Hornady. So Steve, thanks for coming on with me today.
That's quite an intro.
Quite an intro.
I wouldn't have done half of that crap.
Right. Well, you are the boss man, and I know you're busy, and I do appreciate you sitting down with us and letting our listeners kind of dive into Steve Hornady.
Okay.
So without further ado, let's get started. And with any story, we got to start at the beginning. So let's start at the very beginning. And you were born in 1949, that's right?
Correct.
And that, coincidentally, that's the same year your father, Joyce, founded the company.
Correct.
So where do you fall sibling-wise? You got some siblings?
Well, I have a sister who's about 13 years older, not exactly, and I had a brother who died of pancreatic cancer a number of years ago. So
Okay, so you were...
he was 10 years, and I came along 10 years after my brother, and my mother was not happy with my father at that point in time, but it takes two to tango, so she certainly had a certain level of responsibility.
There's some responsibility there. So the youngest of three, 1949. What's the state of the company as you remember it in your early years? I'm guessing it was at least mildly successful because it's still here today. So the company was doing well, making bullets?
Correct. I mean, I didn't know straight up from down in 1949 or a number of years after that, but my dad started on a garage on 4th Street in Grand Island, rented garage, and he'd had a sporting goods store before that, but he just didn't, it wasn't a business that he wanted to go into. It paid the bills and things like that, but it wasn't what he was after, and he had been an active shooter during the war. He and Vernon Spear made bullets together using reformed 22 rimfire stuff. So there's another video out there that refers to the partnership faltered, which is a fine way of saying it, and they went their separate ways, and Dad started in 49. I remember the store on 4th Street. Remember going in there, remember doing stuff. We were there until I think 1958 when we moved to where we are today. And of course I don't remember the story, but I remember my dad telling me that people said, you know, Joyce, why are you moving so far out of town? And now we're completely surrounded and landlocked to that degree. So
That's cool. Is that building still on 4th Street? Is it still standing?
oh yeah,
It's
a garage. I don't know who occupies it at this point, but yeah.
That's kind of neat that all these years separated, that building's still there, and the humble beginnings, and how many people locally have driven by there and not even known that was where everything started.
Seth, they drive by here and don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Oh, that's true. So you moved here in 1958 to the present facility. So 1958, you'd be 9 years old. What was Steve Hornady doing as a 9-year-old? Was baseball a thing? And you know, what was your interest when you were that age?
Miserably a failure at baseball, Little League. That didn't work for shit for me. I didn't realize that's not one of the adjectives I'm supposed to be using, but you're going to get used to it over this conversation. But I was, we were just neighborhood kids. We did stuff.
Did neighborhood kid stuff?
Yeah.
That's usually maybe getting into a little bit of trouble, having fun, running around,
We didn't get in any
slingshots.
trouble. Kids didn't get in trouble in those days.
Oh, sure, right. I forgot. Okay, so as you grew up a little bit past that, did you have an idea of what you wanted to do when you grew up? What was kind of the dream?
Well, not when I was 9. I didn't know.
No.
Does any 9-year-old, I mean, I suppose there are some who think that they do, but I certainly didn't.
Even far off stuff. When I was 9 years old, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, and I fell short of that. But at the time, it was pretty cool for 9-year-old Seth. So, is there anything
I
off in
remember
the stars that you wanted?
I remember that I wanted to be a zoologist, but that's because I thought a zoologist was someone who ran zoos, as opposed to who did research into animals and so on and so forth, which would have been way beyond my academic skill set and motivation.
Sure. So in those early years, before let's say you were old enough to drive, did you get involved in hunting at all? Did your dad do a lot of hunting in those days?
We did a lot of varmint shooting, and he did some hunting. He would leave every fall. They'd go up to South Dakota or Wyoming or whatever, and they'd come back with some deer. Drove a Nash Rambler station wagon, and there'd be a couple of deer strapped to the hood, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, and they'd come back, and I remember he got in trouble. He didn't get in trouble, but this is back in the before we had the internet and people could just rip on you with criticism. He took a picture of an ad, or took a picture of the deer that he'd killed in Wyoming. He and a couple of other guys, and they were does. And so he took a picture and put it in an ad that gone hunting and used this bullet, et cetera, and then he got nasty letters, "So you killed a doe." And that was back in the day when people didn't realize that managing wildlife means you have to take a certain number of females out of the population as well. And he got into all kinds of trouble. Today, you can imagine what it would be like, you know, if those same attitudes existed. People would light up the damned internet with crap like that. But of course, back in those days, you had to put your name and address on a letter. So if you got too nasty, either it went straight to garbage or we knew where to find you.
Yeah, there was a little bit of...
Too bad we can't do that now.
A little more personal responsibility. Well, and even for someone to put deer strapped onto the hood or the roof of a Rambler Nash, now you don't see anything like that, but I suppose at the time you had to get them home.
It was no big deal. You saw other people that had something strapped on the roof of the car, you know. That was
Nothing new.
But when you think about what a Rambler Nash was, or the Rambler or the Nash, I don't remember. Those might have been two different vehicles. That was a long time ago.
Sure.
Yeah, but anyway, it wasn't that much of a car, so.
Sure. So you doing a little varmint hunting, and
We did a lot of varmint shooting.
shoot a lot of prairie dogs around at the time.
Yeah. You'd go up here to Tennifer's Farm and shoot dogs all day. There was a place that we would drive west here. It seemed to me at the time as a little boy, it just drove forever. But we'd go out there and shoot prairie dogs, and it'd be my dad and mother and my brother and sister and me, and we'd sit there and you shot prairie dogs out of the car and move and shoot.
So you got tired.
We were testing bullets and stuff like that, but just shooting. And you could go out here in Nebraska, you'd go shooting, no problem.
Just
Stop
enjoying
along the
it?
side of the road, shoot at a prairie dog town. There were one-shot towns were all over the place. Everybody knew about them. Pull up, you got one shot, dogs would go down, drive
Keep on
off,
moving.
go find another one, you know, do the same thing, and you'd get one shot here and one shot there, and
Made a family.
and everybody knew about it, you know.
So accuracy, obviously, one of the hallmarks of the company, and a prairie dog is a small target. For in any capacity, you're shooting at the size of a pop bottle in a lot of cases. So that's product testing and spending time with the family and having fun all in one. So prairie dogs, you can't get enough of them, and they've mostly been poisoned off around Grand Island, it seems like.
I'm sure that's to some degree, but the other one is just agriculture in
Sure.
general.
Yeah.
Has absorbed an awful lot of that ground to the detriment of a lot of our wildlife, pheasant population, quail population. But it hasn't hurt turkeys or deer, so we're loaded with them. So
you found at a relatively early age, athletics probably not your strong suit. So you get into high school, not doing the sports thing. Were you working? Were you working for the company? Did you do things outside of school, extracurricular wise?
well, I had to, I mowed lawns, and I had to mow the lawns out here, which was a lot bigger, and at least I was able to get my dad to get a riding mower, because everything that we've got covered up by parking lot and these offices, et cetera, all the way back to an internal office there, was all lawn out front, so.
Somebody had to take care of it.
Well, yeah, me. Fortunately, we didn't water it much, so, and I don't think we fertilized it at all. I certainly didn't have to, but I started working in the plant. I was certainly in the summertime, I had to mow the lawns and do miscellaneous chores and things out here. They'd give me make work stuff, burn the weeds around the outside or the perimeter, and help take care and clean the bathrooms. I don't remember ever having to get down and scrub out toilets, but certainly some level of janitorial activity until I could. It was probably 15, I think, when I moved inside. I would have done some other things inside before that, packaging department, packing bullets and stuff, but 15 I moved inside and worked packing bullets and shipping department for summer, you know.
Okay. So yeah, got some experience on the janitorial side. Never hurts to learn those skills young. What year did you graduate high school?
68.
So 1968, the heart of the muscle car era. Please tell me you had a cool car.
Hell no.
No?
No. My parents aren't going to buy me a car.
Yeah. Thought all that scrubbing toilets or something would.
No. I did make some money, but I saved it until I was able to buy a motorcycle.
Okay.
Why my mother let me buy a motorcycle is beyond me. I sure as hell weren't going to let my kids buy one. Not that there's anything wrong with motorcycles. Don't need to get that crowd fired up, but back in those days, you know, there were no helmets, there was no eye protection, there was no nothing.
Jump on the bike and go where you want.
And I never had a serious accident, but I had a couple of small ones. But looking back, we did some dumb stuff on our motorcycles we had no business doing, you know. And yeah, didn't want my mind growing up doing that. Why my girlfriend's parents let me put her on the back of a motorcycle and drive off is beyond me.
Different times, huh?
They should have said, no, not doing that.
I would have never guessed you were a motorcycle guy in your youth.
Well, it's what I could afford,
Sure.
because I wasn't getting a car.
Yeah.
We didn't believe in it.
Well, that's,
I still didn't when my kids were growing up. I didn't buy them any cars.
yeah.
But we did have one they could use. So,
And it probably wasn't a speedster.
no, started out as an Audi Fox. Nice little 4-cylinder, 4-speed, 5-speed. And that was it for the kids as far as I was concerned until quite a lot later.
Yeah. So you graduate high school in 1968, and you got a path after that. What direction did you head when you graduated?
I would say indeterminate.
Indeterminate until present day?
I was not what you could say an enthusiastic scholar.
Fair enough.
So I went to college because you were supposed to. And I applied to half a dozen schools. The only reason I was able to get into one or two of them is because I was going to be paying full tuition. It wasn't because of my
Grade point
stellar
average.
academic career and all of the wonderful things that I'd done as a kid or turned into a great model citizen and extracurricular, this, that, and the other. That just, yeah, I was pretty much a wasted youth, I would say, in general. So,
Where'd you pick to go?
well, as I say, I didn't pick to go. It was the only one that
Where were
took
you
me.
allowed to go?
But I went to Monmouth College in Monmouth, Illinois. It's a nice little liberal arts school. I was not a good academic fit at Monmouth, and was told I didn't need to come back. So at that point in time, my girlfriend and I decided we wanted to get married, which we did. And in the meantime, my dad had seen a ranch out in Montana and been convinced by a fellow out there by the name of Morris Blakely that he should come out and buy that ranch, which is what we did. And my wife then and I moved out to Montana, to south of Livingston, Montana, in Paradise Valley, and went to live on a Great Trail Ranch. They put two ranches together at the time, and it was, those were really good times, and you learned really hard work, and I learned how to harness a horse and saddle a horse, and I never was any good at roping a horse, but I learned how to fix fence and brand calves and castrate calves and drink. That was a couple bad nights. I remember those.
So it sounds like between the roping, branding, castrating, the drinking, the horses, that you were dare I say, a cowboy for a while.
No, I was a cowboy.
That's
You put up hay all summer and you fed hay all winter, and that's what we did.
how long did you do that? That's a rough life. That's a hard life, physically demanding.
Well, so we moved there in June of '69 and stayed on that ranch until June the next year of '70. And in the meantime, there had been another ranch come up for sale, and there were some other people that wanted this one, and there were people trading land back and forth and doing stuff like that. So Dad had made arrangements to buy another ranch, which was the Beartooth, and that was north of Helena on Holter Lake. And so my wife and I moved there, and she cooked and I cowboyed while we were on that ranch. And it was a series of other people involved in Montana politics, and some people wanted that land. We bought it out of an estate, and so it had to go through probate, and the whole project or prospect thing can only be described by using a word that has cluster in it. Mm-hmm. And so we were there from that June of '70 until November of that year, at which point in time the ranch had been sold off. We'd had to sell it. Other people had taken it over. This was the Montana politics thing. And the Nature Conservancy bought it and then gave it to the state of Montana. It was a phenomenal place, though, a really great ranch. And my dad and I didn't agree on how we handled that one, but it wasn't my decision to make, and so whatever. But it was really good times, and those were good times for us growing up. And you're lean and mean and tougher than nails.
Yeah. Unforgiving out there, I would think.
Well, no, not that. It's just, you worked hard. It was physical, hard labor. I think I had about a 32-inch waist, and I've never seen that since. So, tough as it could be. But
So you're in there.
when I say tough, I don't mean it was hard. It was just tough. You were up at dawn, and you were on a horse or truck or whatever. You fenced, you fixed fence, you moved cattle, you worked.
So did you start having kids with your wife while you were out there in Montana?
Right. We had Jason, was born in Livingston. Dr. Ito was the attending physician. I remember it very well. Of course, we were young and naive, and oh God, so I don't even know how many people. But so my wife says to me, "I think we need to go to the hospital. My water broke," and we'd been having some false alarms. And so I called down to the ranch and said, "Well, I don't know. She says her water broke, so we'll probably be back." And he goes, "The hell you are! You're going in and having a baby, you know." But we weren't very smart about how some of these things work. They knew that when a cow's water breaks, she's having a calf. Well, it's the same set of circumstances. Sure. Not that my wife was having a calf. We had Jason instead. So, but he was born in the Livingston Hospital, and yeah.
So you're in Montana. Every hunter that's listening wants to know, did you do any hunting in Montana?
Actually, very little, but we guided. We had hunters come to the ranch. So we had a hunting camp up in the mountains. One of the guys that had convinced my father to get into this boondoggle was an outfitter out there, and so we set it up and had hunters come to the ranch and took them up there. And yeah, I wouldn't say I was a guide per se, but I knew where the ground was and how to get across it, and so I led people on forays into
mountain adventures.
Well, or into the sagebrush trying to find a deer or whatever, and that's what we did. So
kill anything big?
No, not that I recall. We had mule deer, and they took respectable, acceptable deer. I never shot one out there. But I don't recall that they were anything to speak of. I don't remember anybody going, "Oh my God, that's something." But most of the people that were coming there were, they were guys from back east who just wanted to go hunt mule deer or elk or whatever, and that was
the scenery,
the place to go.
No shortage of prairie dogs out there, I'm sure.
We didn't have that many.
Really?
No, there were some, but not that I recall. Not on our ground. Our ground was covered with sagebrush.
Okay.
And so you could run cattle through those pastures and things where they could find grass, but you weren't ever going to see a prairie dog out there. There were a couple of spots, but you didn't really have that much time to go do that, so we didn't.
So the cowboying days were coming to an end. What was the transition out of that? Where'd you go next?
Well, we sold the ranch, so I had no home, and figured, okay, I'll go back to school, and we moved to Lincoln. In the meantime, Dad had sold the ranch, and so he had money, and Pacific Tool Company was located in Lincoln, and there was a guy here in Nebraska that convinced my dad that he ought to buy Pacific Tool Company and get into reloading. And of course, we'd been making bullets all this time. And he thought that maybe, since we're selling bullets, we could sell reloading tools, and it'd be part of that same program. The guy that was running that business, he was a hard promoter, hard charging promoter, I guess I would say, and convinced Dad to do this stuff, but it was the centerfire side of it wasn't what he was passionate about. He was passionate about shotguns, and he was a very good shotgunner and double A 27 yards, and so that was all of our emphasis at that point in time, was building shotgun presses, and that was what we were known for a long time. Centerfire reloading stuff was kind of not that important, and there were other brands in the marketplace that were way bigger than we were. Our CBS was totally dominant, and we were sucking wind trying to trying to penetrate that market and get in there. Nobody needed us for reloading tools. They had RCBS over here, they had Lyman over there, and they had Lee over there. What do we need you for? So it was just tough to penetrate that. But you could sell shot shell presses pretty easily. So we made and sold shotgun presses. And I was going to school at Wesleyan for about a year and a half, and we built the plant here and moved Pacific Tool to Grand Island, and so my job moved to Grand Island, and that was it for school.
That was it for school. So your transition into working for the company Hornady was more forced, maybe? It was like we just took on this big deal, we need more help, and you're here?
I wouldn't say it was a big deal. Your job just went away, and again, what was I going to do with a degree? I don't know, I was going to come to work here.
Sure enough.
Didn't have any plans to do something else, so, and had never had plans to do anything else. This was what I wanted to do from the time I was a teenager, and I'd been working here since I was 15. So
you knew you wanted to come back and work somewhere.
Well, I just knew I was going to be in the business someplace, and so came here.
Sure.
Bailed out on Lincoln and moved to Grand Island, and had a second child in the works at that point in time. So we would have been here in '72 by then.
What was the state of the company in 1972 when you got here? It must have been doing well. Obviously, you just added Pacific Tool and Gauge. The bullet side of things must have been going pretty well, getting market share. The company, was it thriving? Was it steady? Was it?
No, I was doing pretty well. We had started Frontier Ammunition back in the '60s, when even during Vietnam War, when it was going on. But the government was selling surplus 7.62 and 30-06 brass. And that's how we got into manufacturing reloaded ammunition. So we got that, cleaned that up and resized, reprimed, etc., and loaded 30-06 and 308. Resized them to 270s and 243s. So you had 72. We had a nice little ammunition business going here. The bullet business was going well. Reloading was sucking and tough, but that's what we were doing. And of course, by 72, the supply of surplus brass was disappearing, and we started buying cartridge cases from Federal at the time. They were the only ones that would sell to us, but we had to start getting some new cartridge cases because we had no reliable supply otherwise. So, but that then gave us an opportunity to expand the line away from other than just something that could be based off of 243 or off a 308 or a 30-06. You could do something else, and add 223 and 30-30 and stuff like that.
Some of the other popular cartridges of the era, for sure. So in the early 70s, mid 70s, you're working here. Did you start shooting trap or any shotgun sports in that time? I know you mentioned the reloaders were huge.
Well, that was the deal. We had that shot shell reloader, so Saturday nights my dad and I would reload enough ammunition to go shooting the next day, and the next day we'd go shoot trap somewhere. And you had active trap clubs here in Nebraska, and still do. And it wasn't that hard to go to Minden or Holdridge, or we didn't go east. Don't have anything to do with those eastern people, but we stayed here. The gun club in Doniphan had a trap shoot every month, and so we had something that we could go to basically every weekend, and we shot a lot of trap. And then that was one of my jobs in summertime, was we'd load up the car and go to different state shoots and demonstrate reloading tools. That was what we did, So go to Kansas, go to Iowa, Did a couple of road trips. One time went to Wyoming and Montana, pulling a trailer and demoing that stuff, hauling the family along, had a camper, and stuffed everybody in there.
So things are going pretty well in the 70s. What was working with your dad like? Sometimes things are smooth, sometimes they're not smooth. Personality-wise, how'd you mesh with your dad as the president, and how'd that
We
go?
got along. I mean, like you say, you don't hit 100% all the time, and there were times I'd be frustrated, or he'd be frustrated with somebody here. I thought a number of the people here treated him with a degree of disrespect, and it bothered me as his son, because I thought they were rude to him, and he didn't need to take it. But he had a level of self-confidence, whatever, that he didn't care. You know, if they want to rant at him and yell and stuff like that, it was like, okay, let them. Their name's not on the door.
Right.
At the end
Good
of the
for
day.
him, yeah.
You know, so it was one of the things of just, you don't have to get fired up about stuff. Doesn't mean you aren't passionate, but you don't get loud or yell very often.
Sure. So he's a level-headed man, from what it sounds
Very
like.
calm and cool and collected and stuff, you know.
That's,
But he had some real assholes working for him.
that'll happen. But yeah, for an employee to have a leader, though, that is calm, collected, confident, that goes a long way. You don't have to say a lot of things sometimes for those attributes to manifest themselves, and that's always nice to look up to. Sounds like he had those in spades, so that's cool. What did he teach you, or did he teach you anything explicitly about the industry or about working in the industry, or did you just kind of pick that up from being around?
Yeah. No, he didn't.
He just
Not much.
did, and
It pretty
you-
much, they kind of left me alone. So I started doing what you're doing. We didn't do podcasts. We took over we had one guy doing the sales department, and I started doing advertising. And we didn't call it marketing at that point in time, but I was in charge of advertising. The other guy was in charge of sales, and that's kind of sort of what we did. But we were a lot smaller.
Sure.
Dad really preferred, that was wrong. His focus was more on manufacturing and either making a better bullet or doing things in the plant, making a better process. And there were times when he and I clashed over that because, funny thing, then as now, it was hard to get enough people to come to work, and we're struggling today. Well, we were struggling then, and so at the time, the way we were set up, you had a bullet press, you had a header, you had a trimmer, and you had one guy was responsible for that setup. And that was it. And he did everything. Well, we couldn't find enough people, so I proposed that we have two guys run 3 presses. And you would have thought that I brought down the wrath of God and humanity because it's impossible, it can't be done. That wasn't his position, it was the position of everybody that worked out in the plant. There's no fucking way that can work. Except, what are we going to do?
You gotta figure it
you
out.
You could run a night shift, but we didn't have staff and management and supervisors to have a night shift, and that was sacrilege as well. So we worked on implementing that, and it took quite a while, and you had to have the right pair of guys, because otherwise they were constantly blaming one another. That press isn't running because that son of a bitch isn't doing his share, and you did that. And that's not a not a good program. But eventually, they figured that there was enough time in a guy's day that he could actually run 2 presses. And that's what we did. So, and we experimented with some other things, but so he was, like I say, he was more involved in the plant, what was going on out there. That was his passion.
Sure.
How to make it, what to do.
How to make it better, how to make it faster, more efficient, better
And how
quality.
to, and how to make one. We introduced the interlock in the mid-'70s there, which was our way of creating a mechanical lock to hold the core in the bullet, and that was something that everybody worked on to develop and stuff. Worked on trying to create new, better pistol bullets. The classic jacketed hollow point at that time was a jacket with a great big chunk of lead out front and a big hollow cavity in the back, and of course they were horribly susceptible to damage and abuse. And if you were washing them, tumbling them in cobs, their noses filled up with cobs, or the tumbling, and you created a lot of abuse on the bullet. So eventually, I think it was later when we brought the jacket all the way up to the nose and created what was ultimately became the XDP and stuff like that. But that came a little bit later.
So working with your father, were there any words of wisdom or sayings that he said that you find yourself using now as the president of the company?
So did my kid tell you that?
No, not your kid.
Somebody did.
Somebody did. Somebody who's my boss.
Oh. He had a phrase that just drove me batshit. Because, as I was telling you earlier, he was relaxed and seemed to be calm and seemed to be very passive to me in what he did. And I wanted him to be, God damn it, get out there and do this stuff, and it wasn't going to happen. And we'd have these sometimes long drawn out arguments. And so the one phrase that he had, which is the one that they've told you that you now want me to say on camera in this podcast, was that, quote unquote, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And I just hated that. And now I use it. Because it's true. Mm-hmm. Yes, I can get people to go out there and do it. And we've all seen that cartoon of, I did it exactly the way you told me to do it. And of course it won't work. Mm-hmm. And there were some things that after my dad was killed and I was running things, there were some things I wanted to implement and could not get the people that were here who were never going to diverge from the way it had been done. You can't do that. That machine will never make a bullet. You can't run 2 on a press. It cannot be done. But we needed to. We couldn't grow otherwise. And so I had a couple of other people here who wanted to stretch their wings, and I gave them leeway to do it. And that's why you see a lot of what we have going on out there in the plant today with new machinery that came in, and the old guard went away. They retired, they got older. A lot of them had been with my dad since the 50s. And they were, I'm not going to say they could see the writing on the wall, they were just positions of influence were going away, and other people coming up that like, yeah, we can do this. Yeah, this will work. Yeah, we can do things this way. We don't need to do things that way. And you do have to implement new methods of doing things and new ways of making bullets and new ways of improving it and new pieces of machinery. It has to be done, or you're you're facing failure. You know, like with most businesses, it's grow or die.
Yeah, you got to figure it out.
So was that the phrase that
That,
you were
oh yeah,
waiting
that
for?
was
Yeah,
the phrase.
I knew it
And
was.
I think we all have sayings that our fathers had said. My dad was full of them, and 15-year-old Seth was like, okay, Dad, whatever. Now I find myself that there's so much truth in a lot of what he had said.
I know. I find myself sitting here and have said even to my son, oh, Jesus, now I sound exactly like my father when I was doing this stuff. Exactly. Almost to the same phrases and phraseology.
That's, I guess, part of doing business with him for so long. So you'd mentioned it earlier, but we should definitely talk about what happened, how your father was killed, and what happened in your life and in the company following that event.
A couple hard years. It gets real. You have to go back in time to January of 1980. Just a series of events. My father-in-law started having some health problems. We discovered that he had a brain tumor. He went into the hospital to have that operated on and stroked on the operating table, which was obviously very hard on my wife, and she went through a tough period. And what we didn't realize at that point in time is she was going into kidney failure. And so that was 1980, spring of 1980, and she started having some health issues and just couldn't get them. And we finally went into the doctor, and he said, get in here now, and you're going to Omaha now. We had single-digit kidney function left at that point, and took her in, got her stabilized, and then she had to go on dialysis. And so that was in late spring. Well, in June 3rd, 1980, there were 8 tornadoes that hit Grand Island. My mother-in-law, who is a widow now, her house was leveled. And I mean, there was no more standing there than this and a closet in the middle. It was just gone, as was her entire neighborhood. My house wasn't hit, my parents' house wasn't hit, but a tremendous number of our employees were. Power was out for days and days, no water, nothing. And so we had to try to put that stuff together. At the same time, my wife is now going through these issues with dialysis, and which is extremely, if anyone's ever had someone on dialysis, it's extremely debilitating. Once they get through it, they're stable for 3 or 4 days before you got to do it again. And every 3 or 4 days, you got to do it again. So that was hard. And my mother-in-law moved into the house with us. Well, they started tearing her house apart and rebuilding it and everything, which we worked through and went on. And then in January of 81, actually January 1st, we'd gotten a phone call the night before that a kidney was available. She could get a transplant the next day, and that's what we did. And so the SHOT Show was coming up. It was going to be in New Orleans, and obviously my wife is in Omaha at the hospital with a new kidney transplant and things. And my kids are staying with friends, and probably my mother-in-law at that time. But there was no way I could go to the SHOT Show.
Oh, not at all.
And so Ed Heers, who was our ballistics engineer and was now a bullet design engineer, and Jimmy Garber, who was our marketing and sales guy. Ed had taken flying lessons. Typical younger people. My father, so this was 1981, would have been, he was born in '07, he would have been 73 at the time, and they think that, he's getting older and you need someone younger to be flying the plane and things like that, which let me inform you that that's not that old, and no, you don't. But anyway. Anyway, we flew our own plane at that point in time, and they loaded up and went down to New Orleans and had a mechanical problem on the plane, which ultimately was resolved to be, or determined to be, runaway trim, which put the rear tail into an extreme up position, which is an extreme nose down position, and they couldn't recover from it and crashed, and they were all killed. That was a tough day.
I can't.
And I can still remember it.
Can't even imagine.
Every bit of it. Had to tell my mother. Had to go tell Jim Garber's now widow. Had to go tell Ed Here's widow. And get them someone over there to help start picking up the pieces, and still trying to find out, what had happened, and where do we go from there, and let everybody know. Here, that was horrible.
I can't even begin to relate. And when you're working as a family-owned company, you have the weight of that falling on your shoulders on the family side and as the company.
Seth, not really. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that there was any weight on my shoulders or anybody else's. It was just, you got to do what you got to do. And so we had people here who, you need to pick up the pieces and keep operating here and keep going. You get the family, you plan funerals, you just do what you have to do. I don't look back on it and with any feelings of that it was a burden or anything like that, but it was horrible.
Sure.
And even going back now, sitting here talking about it with you on this stupid damn camera there, it brings back some emotional parts to that. They're still a little tough.
Yeah, there's probably wounds that time will never heal.
Can't fix that. So
Can't fix it.
but you have to pick up, and you have to keep going from there, and that's what we did. And the physician's mantra is first do no harm, and that was everything here is don't up.
It's working right now, so let's make sure we're doing what works.
Yep, leave it alone. We didn't have debt. We were in good shape. And we had a good sales force of reps out there, and we just kept going, and that's what we did. That's what you got to do.
What you got to do. You got to put your nose to the stone and pick it back up and go to work.
Yeah.
And that's about the best way to do it. And it's obviously it worked out, and
Well, we're still here.
we're still here. What did the
It wasn't all
structure?
flawless, but we're still here.
What did the structure look like? You said you've got an older brother. You assumed the president role after your father's passing right away, or how'd that work?
Yeah, neither my brother or sister were involved in the business.
Okay.
My brother was a physicist involved in nuclear research. That was his passion, and being here was not his passion or his interest. My sister had a management job at Polaroid, and she wanted to come back, and her soon-to-be husband was an engineer there. So since we had lost Ed and our engineers, or engineering, one, having Don come back. Don David was my brother-in-law, her husband, and he came back as chief engineer.
Okay.
Only engineer.
The only engineer.
And pick up pieces of that, try to go. And my sister came back and moved into an administrative position, which was covered HR and a lot of things, just he covered a bunch of stuff. The sales manager that we had working here was with us and stayed, and had another young person here who we elevated into, that moved into that sales role more prominently than she had before, and that was Cindy Flanagan, who, if you know anything about this industry, has been around this industry for quite a while, and she started here as a receptionist before she ended up moving up through the ranks and ended her career at Loophole in sales and marketing. So when I say ended her career, that sounds, she retired. Sure. Now she's, I think, close to 10 years younger than me, so I don't know how the hell you get to retire at that point, but she did. And you just keep going, and you keep doing, and we kept expanding and trying to do more stuff, and we were improving our processes out there and bringing in some different machinery and expanding our talent pool as far as technical skills are concerned, not just in manufacturing, but in engineering and things like that. So brought in some more manufacturing people and basically raised the bar as far as our abilities were concerned.
That's fantastic to come out of a tragedy like that and to get all your poop in a group and to drive on even higher and to go even further and to expand your capabilities in your product line and just keep it under a family name where a lot of companies could have faltered and sold to somebody else.
It was considered. Sure. So poop in a group is a new phrase, thing.
Well, in an effort to monitor my speech, there's one that also goes stuff in a kit as well. But,
I see. I'm just curious where some of the phraseology. I remember when, we don't want to get wrapped around the axle became the phrase that was de rigueur at the time. And of course now it's woke, which by the way isn't a word. Right. It's a bastardization of a word, taking a syllable off of a word, and there's no such thing as woke. You might have awoken, right, but otherwise you're not woke.
Agreed.
You're just a politically correct shitbag.
There we go. So, company's doing great, and your children are obviously growing up. And did any of them initially in their younger years, really like being around the shop or like being around in the office setting, or were they happened to be here?
I don't recall any of that particularly.
Okay.
Didn't have the same, I guess, the same orientation towards being here, perhaps, that my dad did, Mm-hmm. Dad would be out here on Saturdays writing letters and doing all that stuff, and I didn't.
I can't blame you. Saturdays should be for shooting prairie dogs.
Well, it just wasn't the motivation. It
Sure.
wasn't what I was doing.
Okay. So as the kids got older and now they're, in high school, graduating high school, going into college, obviously we know at the end of the story, Jason ends up working here, but did any of your other children have interest to work here? Or
I don't know about my youngest daughter. My middle daughter did, I guess. I kind of sort of didn't find out about it until later, and I regret not doing more in that era, but to some degree, dads didn't do as much with their daughters then. And I regret that. I'm sorry for that. She went a different direction and got a degree in religion, which I'm not sure, well, it would have worked around here because of the way we swear, so you could use it quite a lot, but didn't actively pursue that at that time. So, and maybe that was a mistake. But she has a happy life, and
That's all you can ask for.
that's all you should ask for.
Sure.
I know some people who, I want my kid to follow in my footsteps or whatever, and I never wanted that, and don't today. What I want is for my kids to have a happy life. I don't care what they're doing. That's not entirely true. If they were drug dealers, I would care. Mm-hmm. But I mean, what you want is for your children to have a career and a life and a family and be happy with that, because that's all we can hope for in the time that we're allotted on this planet, is have a happy life. Have someone that you love and loves you, and do something you feel is worthwhile for you. And I don't care if my kid is waiting tables or is working in the plant or is pursuing nuclear physicists. It's just as long as they're happy doing what they're doing. Go there.
That's great parenting advice as a whole. And I'd mention at the end of the story, Jason does end up working here. So, internally we've kind of all heard this, and I'm sure there's people in the industry that have heard this as well. But there are some rules that I'd like to.
You were prompted on this one too, weren't you?
Well, I'm kind of curious about their origins. Not just that I'm prompted,
Really?
but what, who decided those, and what kind of rules are there if you're wanting to work in the family business?
I started working here when I was 15, actually 12 if you count mowing lawns and so on and so forth, and I never worked for anything other than the family business, ever. And I think that's a mistake, because I was not exposed to other things other than the way our family does it and what our family does. And my dad isn't going to fire me and so on and so forth. And I quit a couple times and yelled and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, no, I was going to be here. I hadn't finished college, didn't have a degree, I didn't have any transferable skills. If I didn't work here, I wasn't going to have jack shit for a life. So what I said is that my kids, if they want to come to work here, there will be a job for them, but not until they're 30. And that is going to be the rule for my grandkids, and if I'm alive, great grandkids, if they want to, I don't care. Go do something for someone else who will fire your ass if you don't do your job. Or you'll find something that you want to do, a career. And if you do, that's all I can ask for you. If you find a career that you want to pursue, go do that. I'd love for you to do that.
Sure.
But if you want to come here, there will be a job. I don't know what it is. It may not be a position. It will be a job. And there's a difference.
There is a difference.
Yes, there is.
And go out and get some life skill. I think that's really cool. I remember when I was first employed, and I learned about this. I thought that was awesome, because a lot of people in life don't get anything handed to them, and you're not doing that here either. Go out and earn it and learn and get experience, and then we can talk. And that really, that boded well for Jason, because he knew he wanted to come here, and when he graduated from college, he went to work for a rep in Ohio, Kenny Berger. And he was the grunt at the bottom of the totem pole who had to work the dealer shows and haul the crap around and do this and do that. But Kenny taught him a work ethic and getting into that store and talking to that guy behind the counter and the guy who's doing the stuff, and that's what you do. Mm-hmm. And that, as I say, that boded well. He did that for Kenny for a number of years before he went to work for Redfield, which was in the throes of
the corporate private equity firms, what they're called today, but yeah, I guess they were probably then too, but it's a better phrase than to give it today, but that owned Redfield, and they were trying to figure out what they were going to do, and they had an environmental disaster where they were located in Denver, and the things were just going to compound on them, and they did, and so the company ended up closing after a couple of years of experience, while he was there. But that was also really valuable experience of being in that position and working for a couple of bosses, one of whom was the opposite of my father as far as how he treated employees, because he'd have been a Mr. Dithers. None of you know who Mr. Dithers is. I'm going to make you go Google it.
Okay.
You don't know, do
I
you?
have no idea.
Exactly. Okay.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, you should. Mr. Dithers. Anyway, he worked under a completely different boss and situation than that one, and I think knew real early on he didn't like that very much. And then when the opportunity opened up, he went back to being a sales rep for Duncan Lewis and Charlie Duncan, and lived in Denver and had 2 accounts. And he had to just work his ass off for those 2 accounts, because one was Cabela's and the other one was Academy. And both were demanding and expecting what he'd get done, and he did well there. It was really good experience.
Yep.
I wish he'd have brought it with him when he came here.
That'll
That'll get my ass in trouble.
There's a saying I heard, I forget when, and I'll probably butcher it, but I'll paraphrase it, that you can condense knowledge. You can devote a lot of time and effort to learn factual and technical things. You can condense knowledge, but you can't condense experience. You have to. There's no way to condense it without doing it.
Right.
And that's
agree.
good that Jason went out there and did that. And it sounds like he learned a lot of those work ethic things that you probably did being a cowboy. That you got to work. There's a lot of work to be done, and you're going to have to do it because no one else is going to do it for you.
I never want to throw another hay bale as long as I live, but I know how to do it. I know how to fix fence and dig a post hole. So, we'll see people with these post hole diggers. You've seen them, right? Where they go down and pull like this and come up. Bullshit. Get a shovel and go down, and then you get a tamper, and you can dig it a hell of a lot faster.
So Jason joins the company in 2006. What were your expectations when he came in? Did you have anything specific for him to go after, or what were you hoping he'd bring?
It was still some of the same rules that you have today. You know, he didn't work for me. He worked for the director of sales and marketing that we had, and so he worked for him.
Okay.
And so my expectation is that you're going to do what your boss tells you to do. I didn't want him working directly for me. I thought that would be a mistake. I don't believe in any business, of course we violate it now, normally in any business you would not have one relative supervise another relative. That's philosophically a bad program for any management situation. Now, of course, in theory I supervise him, in reality I don't.
As the president, what were your passion projects and some of the big milestones as far as the big picture of the company? Now that it's 2021, we're in the heart of an ammo shortage pandemic kind of thing going on, but removed from the year 2020 and 2021, what were some of the bigger milestones since you took over as president that you wanted to see us hit? Or was there anything specific, or you just generally wanted to see us do well and grow and prosper and make good products?
It was more along the latter. I mean, just as I said, the physician do no harm. You keep going and doing the best you can, and expanding the operation and doing what we needed to do. A couple of things one of the things that we achieved in there was being able to get the company transferred from my mother and father's estate over to my sister and me, so that was, moved on without having to sell the business to pay taxes or anything like that. And then we were constantly under pressure for the ammunition operation to grow, and I had talked to my father when he was alive about getting into cartridge case manufacturing, and he told me it was impossible. We'd have to have metallurgists, and we'd have to do this, and we'd have to do that, and it was just impossible to do. But in the early 90s, very early 90s, the supply of cartridge cases coming to us was severely threatened with the election in '92 of Bill Clinton, which was, for all of the people listening today who think about the ammunition shortage, well, in '92 we had one also, because people were panic-stricken. Guy from New York was proposing a 10,000% tax on ammunition. NRA had called, not ATF, but government jackbooted thugs, and there were all kinds of controversy, and we were still dependent upon Winchester and Federal for cartridge cases in order to make ammunition, and it was like, we got to figure out how to do this. And so that would have been the one thing that we did at that point in time, was like, okay, we've got to develop some independence. We've got to develop this capability. We're never going to be able to get out from this circumstance. And those guys were good vendors. And you have to remember, they were being good vendors, as good as they could, at a time when even the salesmen for their company were saying, why the hell are you selling OEM brass over there at Hornady when we don't have enough to sell our customers over here? That's stupid. And I don't know whether people at management just decided to try to be nice guys, or whether they decided that, well, we've followed through, we've led them this far, or if we keep supplying them, they won't get into making ammunition themselves. And I don't know what their motivation was, but it didn't matter. We had to do it. And so that was the big step that we took in the 90s, was we've got to start making brass. Yep. Got to start making brass. And then have essentially never looked back. That's really what gave us the opportunity to become the ammunition company that we are to do today, with the innovation that we were able to do, because you didn't have to go tell your competitor about the new cartridge that you had just designed with another gun company that was going to be really pretty cool, and a lot of them were. So it's some neat shit.
That's kind of Hornady in a nutshell, at least in my experience in the time that I've been here, is that we do some neat shit. The innovation, and I think that's one of the hallmarks, at least I see it as one of the hallmarks of being a family-owned company and being a small company, is our ability to quickly react to a good idea. Like, when there's a good idea, there's not a whole bunch of red tape to cut through to get a R&D sample of a case or ammo or a chamber drawing or whatever. We've got most of that stuff we can do in-house, and we can do it right now. I think that's one of the benefits of being a small and family-owned company.
Yeah.
I think one of the other...
Right, you nailed it.
One of the things
didn't even need me.
I wanted to mention for the listeners out there is being a family-owned company, and again, I've been here for only 8 years, and in that time, I've really been impressed with the expectation that's never expressed. It's never been expressly said, I expect this of you, but the expectation that you need to volunteer in the community, you need to when and where you can. We work with United Way a bunch, and I've always thought that was super cool. That it's almost a culture, and we're on the roads cleaning up the roads and volunteering for that kind of stuff. And I wanted to ask you, was it always like that? Am I perceiving something that maybe is new, or was that volunteer and donate and take care of your community thing kind of always been something that Hornady's done?
I think it has always been there. My parents were involved in what's today is United Way. Back in then was Community Chest. My mother was been on the board of the Red Cross. You supported your community. My father was in Lions Club. This was our home, and these were our people, and you support your community. Why would you not do that? And particularly if you're successful and you have the ability to do that, you give back to your community, whether it's your industry or the town you live in. There are people I know who live in a town like this, and they won't give rat crap to charities or any of the things, and they're not bad people, but they don't see that responsibility. That's not how we are. You're right. We've had employees have been involved in multiple civic organizations like Boy Scouts and Red Cross and some of those, and some of it was hard. I remember got on a Boy Scouts fundraising deal where you were expected to give them $100, and I didn't have $100. And you're in this room with these other people, and they're all, we're going to have to give $100, and I'm going, shit, where in the hell am I going to find $100? I don't have $100, and I have to go ask people for $100. That was tough, but we just have always been, this is our home, and this is what you give back to your home. Mother was on the museum. Folks were on the foundations, made it possible, or served on the Chamber of Commerce, even though virtually none of our business is dependent upon Grand Island. All of our business is outside. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you serve.
That's great.
What you were supposed to do. You be a good citizen. Why would you not want to do that? I don't understand those people who don't want to support their community.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad it wasn't just me looking into things too deep, and that's always been kind of one of the things that have driven the company. Because we have a lot of employees that are local, and a lot of businesses that are your employees are taking their paychecks and spending their money at, and it's nice to take care of people helping people. Well, I'm going to shift gears. So that probably felt more like an interview, like I was just drilling you with questions and stuff, but I'm going to make it more of an interview.
It was somewhat of a biography. Only it was autobiographical. I had to do the whole goddamn thing myself.
Well, I'll try to
What
make
are you
this
laughing
quick.
at?
I want to do some rapid fire type questions, just some stuff.
The answer is no.
About you, okay?
No.
What's your favorite animal to pursue?
No. Oh, what?
Yeah.
You mean like hunt?
Yeah.
I think probably most people know that I do sheep and I have done sheep and goats. I'm not mad at them anymore. I've pretty much accomplished the most of the goals that I set for that, for sheep and goats. There are a couple of places that maybe I would be interested in going again, but it's getting harder. The other one is time to do it. And the other one is some of these are damned expensive. And I'm not of the opinion that they're worth everything that's being charged for it. So that's why I'm struggling with some of the ones that, I've got a number of friends in the Wild Sheep Foundation and Ovis and things who've got a hell of a lot more sheep and goats than I've got, and they've got some that I don't have and won't have, not because I can't go do it, but because they're too damned expensive, and I'm not going to spend that kind of money. It's offensive.
That's understood. So of the sheep and goats, is there a specific hunt that stands out as the pinnacle, or your favorite hunt that you went on to get the one?
No. I've had a lot of people ask me what was your favorite hunt, and there's no such thing.
They're all just great for different reasons.
Well, no, some of them have been really crap holes, and so it's a lot easier to to talk about the ones that were just horrible, rather than good ones, because good ones that were successful were successful, and some were easier than others, and some were harder, and some you went further, and most of the ones that you went the farthest for turned out successfully. A couple of them didn't, and you go back. But yeah, there were some not very good experiences.
Care to go into your worst hunt?
That's a little harder to describe, because there were just some interesting experiences. So the most unique of all the hunts that I've ever gone on in the world was a polar bear. Oh, yeah. And I don't care where you go in the world to hunt sheep or goats, it's no different than going any other place in the world to hunt sheep or goats. If you're on a mountain in Mongolia, it could be just like a mountain in Montana. The terrain is similar, the temperatures are similar, it's like that. Or over in Russia, or any one of these places, they're no different. You go to Africa and you go hunting along one of those dry riverbeds, it's just like a dry riverbed out here in the Platte River. There have been times when I've looked at that and said, holy crap, I could be 6 miles from home and it's virtually identical. Different animals, different fauna, but the climate and things are the same the world over, but the Arctic is not.
Okay.
There is nothing to compare. You'll never do anything, I don't care how cold you've been, it always got warmer, and up there it didn't. You could tell the difference between minus 20 and minus 40. Most people who tell you that at minus 40 it's just too bitterly cold to do anything, hell, we were out hunting at that point in time and trying to find a polar bear. You were glassing and looking, and you can't breathe. I wear glasses, so I had to do the whole hunt with my glasses in my pocket because they were just covered with, and it's not fog, it's ice.
Ice, oh yeah.
Because it freezes solid. You can't take your, wipe it off. You had to get them warm, put it in a pocket and get it warm in order to wipe the crap off so that you could see. And so I'm mildly nearsighted. It's not really bad, but I spent 10 days out there looking for bears with no glasses on because I couldn't put them on.
Wow.
And then when I did finally take a picture, you can see they're fogged up. Visually, I've got them halfway down my nose so I can see the damn camera and everything. You know how hard it is to take a poop when it's minus 40 and you don't have time and you got to get your clothes off and you have to expose everything that is near and dear to you and make it happen as fast as possible.
Oh gosh. It's the little things that add up.
It's frozen within fractions of a second. Wow. It's amazing.
That sounds like the most unique.
But it was by far and away. And everything that they do up there depends on users the cold. I was fascinated to watch my guide, how you staked the dogs out, how he built the runners for the sled, where he used water and Kleenex and flour to build the runners for the sled. Hand built them. There's a wood runner underneath, but the skin on that was this stuff that he'd spend at night or in the evening when we were done for the day, he'd spend his day trimming and cleaning up those runners because they'd gotten beat up during the day, and he'd redo them again. So I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, and when the last dog is hooked up, you better be on the sled because when they take off running, there is no stopping them. And if you're not on, it's just gone. And now your two guides are madder than hell at you because you didn't sit down soon enough. I didn't ever fall off, but I almost missed getting on, and I grabbed my ass and the sled took off. So,
yeah, that's a hunt that very few, I'm sure, have gotten to experience.
Yeah.
Was it a successful hunt?
Yeah, it was. I shot a very nice, respectable bear. I know, some guys are up there for, if it's not a giant, they're not going to do it. I wanted a good bear, and I got a good bear. But it was so cold that I couldn't get the ammunition in my gun because my fingers stopped working. And on the first shot, when I closed the bolt, the gun went off into snow. Like, oh shit, that's stupid. And now you've got a racket, and now you've only got 2 cartridges in there, and you're trying to shoot this bear, and it's virtually point blank, but you're still looking through a scope. Mm-hmm. And the polar bear's got about that much hair on his chest, and I put a hole right through that hair. Didn't do a damn thing, and the guy's going, "You're too low." And so I come up and shoot, and that was the last shot in the gun. And I pull out ammo, and I can't make my fingers work to load the magazine. And he said, "You want me?" "Yeah, load the magazine." So he loaded the magazine for him because my fingers, they stopped working. Yeah. Everything is so bitterly cold. And you got to be barehanded at that point.
Sure.
So it was not my best performance, but successful. And you don't, once you skin that bear, you don't have much time because the blood freezes too. Oh. And you don't have an hour and a half to get the hide off this elk and all this other stuff. You got 20 minutes to get that off and get it going because that blood is going to freeze right now.
That's remarkable. And I can definitely see how a successful hunt, but the bear, the successfulness of the hunt by killing the bear was almost secondary to the experience of being up there.
The experience is, you go polar bear hunting to go to the Arctic to go hunting. And there's nothing else up there to hunt anyway.
Yeah, right.
But it was, it was a phenomenal experience. One you'll never, as I say, of all the hunts, it's the most unique. All the rest of them, if you're on a horse in Kazakhstan, it's a horse somewhere else. Sure. Except for those miserable Russian saddles. So.
All right, so next kind of rapid fire question. We've developed a ton of cartridges here. You've taken animals with many different cartridges. Do you have a favorite cartridge, whether we developed it or not?
Well, the one that I hunt with the most today is 300 RCM. It's a compact rifle, designed for a 20-inch barrel. It's easy to get on and off a horse. It's easy to have on your shoulder, and it'll basically take anything in North America except the biggest of the bears.
300 RCM.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've shot actually one of your rifles. It's a Christensen short carbon barrel.
Yep, great gun.
Yeah.
It's only that long. And you get that's what we did when we developed that cartridge, is we were working to get the performance out of a compact rifle. RCM stands for Ruger Compact Magnum, and Ruger was who we were working with. And Steve Hornady was the president at that time and says, "Help me design a cartridge that'll fit in our standard action or short action and a short barrel and compact," and that's what we did. And it's the best of the bunch. I don't care what else you're shooting, the 300 RCM is still the best cartridge we've ever designed.
And I said I've shot it, and I think the reason I shot it was back when I was still working in ballistics for engineering, and I think we got in a new suppressor, or you got in a new suppressor rather. You hunt suppressed preferred?
If I can.
If you can. That's music to my ears and many others.
That's the only way to do it. I mean, come on. These anti-gun idiots out there say we should have gun laws like England, and you know what? You're right. They have suppressors on all their guns.
Yeah, it's expected.
That's the first rule that we should go with. Yep, suppressors on every firearm. No shit, Sherlock. I mean, come on.
Better experience, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Everyone involved.
A couple of years ago, you can't take a suppressor international at this point. Hopefully that's going to change. But I went to Africa, and I was going to do all small game night hunt, all nocturnal animals. So they're not big, and so I took a a 300 blackout, and with our subsonic load, our sub-X, and that 190 grain bullet was fine for what I was doing. It didn't destroy any of the small animals, but it was big enough to take an impala, and the PH that I was hunting with over there was going, holy crap, this is phenomenal, because even that wasn't loud, you know. And if I'd have had a suppressor on there, it would have been a no-brainer. That would be phenomenal, and I would really like to be able to take suppressors. I had it in England with, suppressed 243. Swap! And that was it.
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
Maybe one day we'll get on board.
Well, they're legal in most states. It's just acquisition is a little bit difficult at this point in time, and under this current administration, I don't see acquisition suddenly becoming easier, though there are, bills and movements and people. We've got supporters in Congress trying to push that through and get it done. But of course, it's going to be a struggle with the current administration that has shown themselves to be very inimical to Second Amendment rights and to those of us who believe in hunting and shooting as recreation.
Well, yeah, that's might be an uphill fight, but yeah, I'm a big fan. If you can't shoot it suppressed, man, it's hard to talk me into shooting it anymore. I mean, it just it makes it better for everybody.
Yeah, across the board.
So, obviously, hunting, shooting. There's plenty of plaques and trophies around here for your trap shooting skills and.
Not my trap shooting skills. There might be some trophies and things around here, but not. Trap shooting was never one of them. Okay. I maybe earned 1 or 2 trophies on it. Damned few. So, aside from shooting, aside from hunting, aside from being the president here, what are some other hobbies unrelated to the shooting stuff? What do you find yourself doing? I know you've got a little farm. Is that part of it? I am cheap unpaid labor for the young man that farms my ground, and I go out and I do the chores that he has assigned to me. So,
cowboy at heart?
No, this isn't even cowboy. If he had a horse, that'd be phenomenal. No, this is just grunt, dig holes, chop down cedar trees, dig up stuff, clean, kill off the locusts, and not the bugs, the trees. We have that honey locust here that grows those thorns that'll put any African acacia to shame. Just grunt, sweep the barn, wash off the bobcat. I bought the equipment, he uses it.
Okay, he gets it dirty, you get it
clean. Yeah, half the time I don't know where my stuff is because he's moved it over to his place. I have to ask him if he can bring it back so I can use it this weekend. I need to dig some post holes. I need to dig that stump out of the ground. I need to pile brush.
Always stuff to do.
Oh yeah.
Good way to spend your free time, I guess. Still working. So of your list of accomplishments that you've had and the cool things that you've been able to do you have a personal achievement that that stands out to you that maybe you'd be the most proud of?
I don't know. I think just the general success that we've had here as a company has been something that I'm pleased with. My dad would never believe that we could be where we are. He never would have conceived that we could have developed and become the business that we are. And I'm pleased that, if he's rolling over in his grave, he rolls over and sits up and says, "Oh, okay." I know. My sister and I were talking the other day that my dad's rolling over in his grave because you guys in marketing don't have red T-shirts anymore. Might be something you think about if you don't want it. If you don't want the ghost of my father coming back and haunting you.
Red T-shirts.
That was all we ever had was a red T-shirt.
Okay.
I accept that you have to have other
diversity
options and some. Yes, we want diversity.
Okay. Well, red T-shirts. Well, I'll make a note of that too with the Mr.
But that we don't have a red T-shirt and my sister said, Dad is rolling over in his grave.
Well, the state of where the company is today and your involvement in that's definitely something to be proud of. So that's a hell of an answer for that, and probably leads into what you see as the future of the company. Obviously, we're going to continue to grow and innovate, and that's kind of really how we've made our mark here in the last couple decades is innovation. But where do you see the company headed? Do you foresee any of your grandkids wanting to get involved?
I don't know. They may when they're 30.
Yeah.
Otherwise, go do something. I know my granddaughter's has got marketing as an emphasis in getting a business degree, but in reality, what you get your degree in is generally not particularly relevant to what you end up doing at wherever you go to work. Mm-hmm. And she may want to come back at some point in time. My grandson is still in high school, so he's still got some options open to him, and see where he ends up in school and what he wants to do with it after that. But again, I'm not trying or nor care if there's a legacy of Hornady's here if my children and grandchildren have happy lives. That's what you ask for. And hopefully we can, if you don't have a family member here, you have people here who continue the philosophy of what we've established. I think most of the people that we have in here, if I fell over dead tomorrow and Jason did too, the business would continue pretty much along the lines that it has. Got some family members who would come back and maybe give it some guidance, but this isn't their life either.
Sure.
They have the life, and they would care that it would do well, but I have every reason to believe that it could and would continue.
Awesome. So I'm going to give you one last question, and then I'll stop bugging you
No,
and let you get
the
back
answer.
to your day.
I said no.
Fair enough. Well, let me
No
get
is
it
my
out
favorite
anyway.
answer.
So at this point, it's 2021. You've been president of Hornady longer than your dad had been president of Hornady. And if he were to come in through the doors behind me, what do you think he'd have to say about how you specifically have done as a leader and a boss and as the guiding light for the company?
Well, you can't tell it from where this camera or that one are faced. But at my desk, I have my father's picture looking over my shoulder. So if he walked in, and I've actually had a nightmare along these lines, where he came back and basically it was, you can't do that. And it was stuff that we were already doing. If he came in today, he'd be, what are you doing in my chair? Get out. Dad, we're not doing that. We're already moved along. I already hear that from my kid from time to time anyway. So, Dad, we're not going to do that. So, as I said earlier, I think he'd be shocked. Just shocked. You can't do what we've done. Could not be done. But you had to get people involved, and you had to bring in more people. And unfortunately for Dad, growing up through the 40s and the 50s and even into the 60s, if it wasn't invented here, it couldn't be done. But we didn't have resources and outside engineers and outside talent. Everybody that worked here had come up through here. They didn't come from outside. They'd never been from outside. So when Ed Heers came here as an engineer, he was the first one we hired from the outside, ever.
Wow. Yeah. I'm guessing he brought a bunch of knowledge with him. And
Well, he moved into taking over the lab because the guy who'd been running the lab since the 50s, doing the shooting and things, retired. And so we needed him there, and then he moved into doing more engineering stuff. So, but he spent most of his time down in the lab doing that stuff.
Just amazing. And it's been, I can't imagine you being able to see the journey from start to present. And, we've certainly got a lot of years left of making some pretty awesome stuff.
Damn right, I've got a lot of years left, so don't you whippersnappers forget it.
That's right. Well,
Hell, I'll be here when you retire.
I hope so. That sounds great. But I really do appreciate, not just, as an employee and I'm trying to do a podcast, but just on a personal level, I appreciate you taking the time
Don't suck up, Seth.
to sit down with me and
Don't start sounding like you're sucking up, Seth. You're not going to get a raise out of this
Well,
deal. I'm telling you that right now.
I can say a raise wouldn't hurt, but I do appreciate everything you've done for me, and I think our listeners will as well. So thanks for sitting down, and everybody that's listening, thanks for tuning in with us on the show, and please subscribe to the podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one.